Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Are We Having Fun Yet? Zippy the Pinhead's 29-Day Guide to Random Activities and Arbitrary Donuts by Bill Griffith. As you can imagine, this is all Zippy. It's a lot of Zippy. It's a pretty fat book. And this is almost like a graphic novel, even though it's chopped up into little chapters, day-by-day guides. It's got helpful hints, recipes, travel tips, beatniks, and sex. So this book is almost like a primer for life. This could be your Bible. It's about life, the universe, and everything. It's amazing. I like this. It has a nice little fold-out cover. And we see what goes on in Zippy's brain. Thoughts about stretched denim, a quarter pound of gorgonzola, etc. If you're not familiar with Zippy the Pinhead, he's been, started in the undergrounds, early 70s, and then in the 80s became a national comic strip, like right next to Nancy and Kathy. So Zippy the Pinhead has been chugging along all these decades. It's still coming out daily. And I've talked about Zippy before in some of our other videos, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it. A lot of the humor is just non sequiturs, and Zippy being this like dada, surreal character. But I gotta say, this is one of the funniest Zippy the Pinhead books or stories I've read. There's some funny shit in here. Just really, it's still very Zippy, that non sequitur humor. Here we see a map of Zip World. And just all these random crazy things are in here. There's where platform shoes come from. A field of glazed donuts. They have this amusement park. I'm sorry, I think it's the abusement park. It says the House of Pain. I was curious if the rap group got their name from them. And it has a guide over here. All the things that are in here. Bushmiller Country. Place with 3 rocks. Not 2 rocks, not 4 rocks, 3 rocks. The Griffith Observatory, a little nod to his old comic strip, where Bill Griffith would look at the foibles of humanity from his observatory. Title page, very cute, Zippy. Contents. Did I mention this came out in 1985? I can't remember. Well, it did. Yeah, I remember it was my first semester of college, and this was in the college bookstore, and I picked it up. This is way before, you youngins out there might not understand this, but no bookstores had anything comic related. They might have, some Calvin and Hobbes collections or comic strips. So this was a pretty amazing find for me. He dedicates it to Diane Newman, who just recently passed away. They were life partners. And we see detour number 1, fun, the concept. And Zippy's laying it down. Kind of, this is the thesis statement of this book. What is fun? Who invented it? Why is it usually day-glow pink? And where does it go when Edwin Meese comes over? There's definitely some dated references in this. Where if you're not as old as me, you'll probably be like scratching your head. Bill Griffith loves to just take weird things from pop culture and throw them in his strips. I think this was some advertising icon. A very creepy one. Frightening. Zippy runs into his friend Shelf Life. Shelf Life is very different than Zippy. He's very practical. And he tries to life coach Zippy. But of course, Zippy's absurdity is impenetrable. And in fact, he almost brainwashes Shelf Life. He's the Pillsbury Doughboy. He's about to jump off a ledge. Don't try to stop me. Hee hee. So Zippy gets in his Funmobile. It's this crazy sci-fi car he has. And he doesn't realize it. but 3 cubists are closing in. They're tailing him in another car. I like this. They're just drawn like Picasso-like characters. So here we have menu planning. All the chapters end with random activities. And of course, these are just crazy, nasty recipes. Pancakes with lamb chunks in a sprightly sauce of blended kiwis and Gatorade. Stuff like that. He even like illustrates weird little news stories of the day. It's just like, he packs every page with so much like jokes, and the drawing is really nice. I mean, man, Bill Griffith, he's a drawer. Just look at this panel. This is all the detail. He doesn't have to do that. Nobody would care. So we find out these cubists are actually cagey career counselors. I think they can't stand the fact that Zippy's so footloose and fancy-free. They want to bind him up in a normal life, like everyone else has to go to work and stuff and care about money. He meets this guy with a brain in a jar, and he's playing around with it. And we learned here's a little more educational fare. He pops the brains in half. In the north, the human brain is divided into northern Italy and southern Italy. And he tells us what's in each half. Plates of gnocchi. 2 industrialists in dark glasses discussing trade deficits with the Pope. Spaghetti westerns. So Zippy takes this total trip through the brain. All of a sudden, he's like a little character in the brain. He's got his backpack of ding-dongs for sustenance. Uncontrollable urge, 500 feet. We see Mayor McCheese, or the other, whoever this guy is, the cop, I can't remember his name. And he's a total dick. He's like a brutal, shitty cop. Detour black hole of trivia. The ego and the superego pass by. Looks like a little baby Ronald Reagan. And she's, I think, supposed to be Nancy Reagan. Just so many weird little references to so many things. Bad thoughts are plaguing him. Rajneesh cults, Dacron tank tops. And luckily he finds solace in the arms of Julia Child. In Zippy's universe, Julia Child is like this soothing Earth mother who makes everything all right. And Zippy falls asleep and dreams, has a beautiful placid dream of him being on a lush tropical golf course. But this is a homage to Rousseau, that artist, who in Arcade Magazine, Bill Griffith did a biography of Rousseau, about 7 years before this, or 8 years before this. Random activities 2, dating the opposite sex. And then we see this little Jean-Paul Sartre comics and stories. So back to the mental landscape where Zippy's playing golf. It's we discover the world of dreams. And he runs into these crazy characters. Another cubist. I think this cubist has nothing to do with the ones from earlier. And it's just all this dream logic. Just crazy things are happening. The stripper and the cop were having a philosophical argument. He meets Yosemite Sam. And they arm wrestle. And then Jean-Paul Sartre shows up. And they go out to lunch. And the restaurant is just populated by all kinds of zany characters. Sergeant Bill Go. And then it ends with Zippy giving him therapy. I don't know why it always makes me chuckle when Zippy tries to be serious, tries to look like an adult. Dressing for Elliot Ness is the random activity for this chapter. And then we get to meet Claude. Claude is a longtime character in all the Zippy the Comic stories. He's basically just a trailer park dude who doesn't like modern America. He wishes it was 1974 again. And, he loved disco. And the 80s is not his cup of tea. He wakes up to the alarm clock. War in the Persian Gulf, right after this hit by Twisted Sister. I hate the 80s. So now we get to see more about Claude. Zippy befriends Claude as he leaves that psychiatrist office. And Claude's filling him in about how 1974 was the golden age of fashion. Bell bottoms, dashiki. Platform shoes. I love these crazy fashions. Bill Griffith is a really good observer of popular culture. I mean, many of his strips are just dissecting how ludicrous new trends are and things. He really, obviously makes a point to read lots of magazines and newspapers and see what's going on. And then he mocks them. These are so terrible. But, as a little boy, I think I remember people wearing things this stupid and ridiculous. Here's the women's fashion. They don't look that bad, actually. They're pretty hot. How to laugh. A yuppie meditates. Oh, it's just so crammed with stuff. This book is so much fun. I wish I could read more of it too, because almost every panel's got a funny line in it. So it seems like Zippy's ripe for the Cubist now. All of a sudden he got something happened in his brain where he's like, I'm into an 80s kind of money thing. So the Cubists show him all these charts and show him what are the best IRAs for him. How to live your life. Of course, it's just your ideal life cycle. You're born, you have a little fun, you get married, you reproduce, you spend a lot of money on crap, and then you die. Things besides Hispanics that have shaped our lives. Like Wilma Flintstone, Bessie the cow. Just all this ridiculous stuff. So Zippy's on his way to becoming a total yuppie. The new patriotism. This was very pertinent because right around this time, Ronald Reagan was solidifying power, and the moral majority was taking over the Republican Party. It was a way more ultra patriotic time. Well, not than now, but than it was before. We were introduced to little Mad Max, this little kid in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. He's still just a little kid that was crying, and here he is here. I like that these are usually segues to the next chapter. So he tells Zippy that he's got to go to Doc Lipshitz's institute. He wants to get his head on straight. The joys of pet ownership. And here's Dr. Marvin Lipschitz. He seems like a real charlatan. It's like some castle from a horror movie. And Zippy says, Bela Lugosi is my co-pilot. So he goes through this Ward Cleaver therapy where he sits in a suburban home and stares at a newspaper, never flipping the page, of course. And then he has to deal with Eddie Haskell's politeness, his passive-aggressive politeness. And we see Zippy's family. I think her name's like Zippina or something. And he has 2 kids. And then he goes in this machine that turns him into a beatnik. Lawrence Welk for squares, man. Like, I'm adopting a Zen attitude towards Eisenhower. Yeah, he trades brains with this beatnik dude. So the beatnik takes on Zippy's recent materialistic shallowness, and now Zippy's a beatnik. So I was a teenage beatnik's the next chapter. And Zippy's writing terrible poetry and going to these crazy bohemian parties. Here we see Alfred, Jerry, and Pere Ubu in the background. So he becomes a literary success from just writing a 2-page poem. But then he bumps into that beatnik guy who switched brains with him, and by hitting each other, they switch brains back. Zippy looks at his goatee. Why are these straight black lines attached to my chin? He goes to the barber. Make me look like Linda Ronstadt again. And the barber says, I knew this beatnik thing wouldn't last. Places not to go in New Haven. It's all these old burger joints. Teen scene. We see Zippy hanging around the Mount Rushmore, and these clean teens, basically think he's a wise man, and they ask him for advice. Of course, Zippy's just spouting nonsense to them, but they think it's like heavy wisdom. Zippy carves the bust of Jack Palance into Mount Rushmore. And the kids are inspired, so they carve Carl Malden's nose. And Zippy feels secure in leaving the nation's future in their hands. Here he has a little tribute to Sanrio characters, Tuxedo Sam. Bill Griffith is very fascinated by Hello Kitty. He has many strips kind of dissecting the phenomenon. Here we see Nancy. It's so weird. Sluggo's like, Nancy, did you ever think about Salvador Dali? All the time. So now we got his Bushmiller time. Another obsession of Bill Griffith. So Zippy goes to meet Ernie Bushmiller. And as he's in Ernie Bushmiller's presence, he regresses in age. So when he asks him, what is fun, Ernie? Ernie just says 3 rocks. And now Zippy's this cute little kid. 3 rocks? That's right, 3 rocks. 4 rocks? No. 2 rocks? Sorry. 1 rock? No. 3 rocks. And then the Cubists show up and they abduct Zippy. Bun on the Run, a restaurant guide. So little baby Zippy is being abducted, and once again, Julia Child shows up to save the day. She's like a monster she's like 12 feet tall or something. So Zippy gets away when they crash. And Zippy goes to this bar, and he sees Claude again. And Claude's doing his restaurant review column. And Zippy helps him out. He writes a few reviews. And Claude just like reviews these horrible, like, Midwest chains, restaurants, International House of Toast, Senior Softy Centers. But then Zippy does a few, and of course they're idiotic. These are pretty funny. So they're at the Road Toad, and we see Mr. Toad. This is a longtime Zippy nemesis. Solve these murders. They just have so much crap in here. This chapter is called Attention Span. And Claude and Zippy are just having a heavy conversation about the Smurfs versus Rainbow Bright, and talking about past loves. And we realize that Claude has a woman he's still stuck on. She was the love of his life. And who should show up but Ron Ain, Claude's ex. And Claude is crying. You have a little Ask Zippy question. Section. Which is, you don't want Zippy giving you advice. It's not going to be very useful. I love this chapter, The Anatomy of Cuteness. And just showing cutification. It's almost kind of like what Scott McCloud talks about in Understanding Comics, about how you can identify more with the character the less detail they have, because you can put yourself in the character. But this is more just about being cute. And then he shows off these are real bizarre toys and advertising icons from the 30s up to the 80s. All these examples of cuteness. And some of them are freaking weird. I like this Blatt Spear guy. I remember these. This is the 70s psycho cuteness era. And here we see Zippy become cutified. He becomes a Sanrio character. And here we have, it's almost like Bill Griffith parodying himself, parodying something else. Because he was the co-editor of Young Lust, that great underground, which would parody old romance comics. And that's what this one's doing. But in this one, the two women are fighting over Zippy. They're both right-wing Republicans. So they're in their thought balloons and word balloons. They're all spouting this, like, right-wing think tank crap. I like handsome Zippy here. Worthy of a romance comic. Zippy's famous fun chain. And we see more just zany examples of fun. The Holly Gully sushi. Martha Ray, big nose humor. And then he proposes that if you cut out one thing from the fun chain, like Henny Youngman, if he didn't exist, we wouldn't have L. Ron Hubbard, How to Stuff a Wild Bikini, or Panty Raids, or Miniature Golf. Back to basics. And it's almost like Zippy's brain has been wiped clean. He's starting at zero. Zippy's has all these strange powers. He's turning invisible so he can go to the ladies' room, using his X-ray vision to obtain a rare glimpse of the inner workings of a potato. He has the power to halt production on all teenage sex comedies. And then he's flying on his giant magic pizza over Cincinnati. The Cubists are still chasing after him. And now that Zippy's gotten tiny again. And so they nab him. Here's some combo coiffs for hairstylists. The Joan Rivers Wally Cleaver, Beatles Bozo, and Veronica Lake spiky punk haircut. That one looks pretty cool, actually. Guest in the Attic. And the Picasso people, the Cubists, take Zippy to the Bob Hope Pavilion, which is really just a high-tech loony bin. Take these, sir. They'll relax you. Yes, but will I see the Easter Bunny in skin-tight leather at an Iron Maiden concert? That's the kind of stuff that Zippy normally says. And then we see Griffey. Griffey's in the mental institution. And Griffey can't help himself, so he kind of takes over the comic and shows the craziness of the mid-'80s. Laser art, stupid eyeglass wear, eyeglass frames. How construction workers are all dirtbags now. They used to be the clean-cut, hippie punching dudes of the 60s, and now they look like hippies. Kathy shows up. Man, he really does a good Kathy, I gotta say. Here's Zippy's Lament. I love that little logo. That's great stuff. And Zippy sings this blues song while he's sitting in a cactus. I got the ding-dong blues. And then Shelf Life and Vizine, brother and sister, show up. And they're like, get out of that cactus, Zippy. You're being crazy. Come with us. The Stupidity Patrol. So Shelf Life and Vizine love to go around just pointing out everyone's stupidity. And Zippy gets into it. Zippy kind of mirrors their behavior. How to build a nuclear device. Could be handy. This one's called Horror Comic. And we see Mr. Toad again. This is the real Mr. Toad. That was just a waiter earlier who looked like Mr. Toad. And they're talking about mean-spirited humor. And he kind of fries Zippy's brain with this information. And Mr. Toad is like, what have I done? This pure innocent. I've gone too far. And then Zippy says, I was only kidding. I was faking. So Mr. Toad's chasing him around. Simplicity itself. How to drop shelf life. I don't know what's up with this panel, but it's really neat. It's like photos of people, but then the heads are crudely drawn in. I don't know what style that is, but it looks neat. So now Zippy's making fun of pop music. We see Madonna, Tommy James and the Shondells, Louis Prima. And they're kind of debating what music's all about. Of course, Louis Prima's just like, hey, it's a good time. Get a little tipsy, have some fun. That's all music is. And we get a modern music chart. This is pretty silly. Creating artistic hedges. I like this, the little Lulu and the baby Huey. And now Zippy, I believe Zippy's in Japan. And that's another thing Griffith is obsessed with. Japanese culture, pop culture. It's just so nutty, from our point of view, especially in the 80s. That was like the first time where Japanese culture was a thing in America. We started looking over at Japan. We see Gojira, these manga characters. Talking about there was a trend then where Japanese people, I guess, like to wear American lettering on their clothing, even though they didn't know what it meant, or it was just nonsense. Women lonely, men not hallowed be. But then, of course, it became a trend at the time for like teenage girls to wear these baggy sweaters with giant Japanese characters on them. And I bet those were probably nonsense too. They didn't know what they were wearing, what the words were. Zippy explains kitsch and tell. The Yow of Physics. Yow was one of Bill Griffith's underground comics where Zippy appeared. And Zippy's going around just philosophizing to people. The universal truths he's illustrating for people. This is craziness. Matter is explained by just boxes of Eggos. Antimatter, the Eggos have all been eaten. The space-time continuum. These are really nice illustrations here. photons, protons, neutrinos, and quarks on their day off. He's ready kilowatt. They look so cute, these little neutrinos and such. And here's God, connect the dots. It's pretty obviously Bob's big boy. So Bill Griffith tackles spiritualism and philosophy. Like I told you, this book has everything. It's the only book you'll ever need. This should be in the bedside table in every hotel room instead of the Gideon Bible. I would like to live in that world. Then we get fun on other planets. And we see all these crazy aliens and learn about their societies. It's kind of weird. It's almost like Bill Griffith's doing sci-fi. He's not a big fan of like silly stuff like fantasy and horror and sci-fi. Here's the thing about tail fins. And now we meet Starhound, this kind of gossip mongering Hollywood chihuahua who knows what's going on with all the celebrities. And they go to visit this guy who used to be on Sergeant Bilko. He was just like a C-list character actor. But he's doing great. It looks like he's in a mansion and everything. He's got it all. But then it turns out that it's really Jim Neighbor's mansion. And he's just the gardener. He's like, get back to work. And then Leona Helmsley shows up. That's another constant. Zippy really has a thing for Leona Helmsley, the hotel magnate who's supposedly a horrible person. She was famous for just firing people at the drop of a hat. Zippy's totally in love with her. So she's just getting on the phone. Hey, fire the whole 4th floor cleaning staff. The way he draws her just makes me chuckle. She was pretty weird looking. She almost looked this weird in real life, but Bill Griffith is obviously, stretching a little. I like this little, mixes things up. I guess after like 100+ pages, he's got to keep himself amused. Now we get to see the future of fun. So we see what the next 100 years will bring. People will hover 2 inches above the astroturf on methane microlasers. Letters will also be delivered by means of methane microlasers. This is amazing, Hillary. I just got an astro letter from Cousin Jed, and he isn't even born yet. Methane microlasers will wonder how we ever got along so many eons without them. I'm using methane microlasers to remove your aversion to Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Snout Awareness 2017. Power bathrooms. People will have meetings while taking a shit in the future. Hostess Products 2065. Double Net Revival 2074. Claude's happy. I like this space station, but it's all a bunch of trailer parks connected to this wheel. Total Toad Takeover 2087. And now we see Zippy and Griffey again, kind of summing it up. And Oral Roberts comes to visit Zippy. Tries to convert him. And Zippy's just like, could you repeat that in Tagalog? Here's a questionnaire. Are we having fun yet? The questionnaire. And as you can imagine, these are just ludicrous. Very Zippy-esque. You suffer pangs of guilt and remorse when A, they run out of Bako bits at the Sizzler, B, World War III ravages your apartment. C, Wayne Newton drops by unexpectedly. Or D, in a fit of righteous indignation, you halt production on all teen sex comedies. It seems like it's a callback to many things in the book, all these questions. There we see the 3 rocks of Bushmiller. And here we have the last random activity. Gives you your fun quotient by how you answer the question here. Good night, Zippy. And Griffith says, he's asleep. Guess he finally ran out of non sequiturs. And Zippy waits till he's gone. And then he says, fun is never having to say your sushi. And we got a little thing about Bill Griffith here. Nice back cover. It's a parody of those old Doers profiles. They used to be in all the upscale magazines. And Pinhead's profile. Last snack consumed, a 12-pack of Count Chocula, brushed delicately with a piquant chutney glaze. $6.95 this thing was. That's a lot of entertainment value, even then for that kind of money, you know. So there you have it. Are we having fun yet? I was recently at a half off. I think it was half off graphic novel sale, and they were just mostly modern stuff. But this was in there for some reason. They still had a copy of this, probably from the remainders section they got 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and it was just still there. So I kind of forced my friend. I was like, dude, you got to buy this because it's $3.50 now. Because they just took half off the original. So, man, if you can find this, I bet you can find it cheap. I think a lot of these were remaindered. I doubt it was very successful, or we would have seen more Zippy books in the mainstream market. But I think it's fun as hell. Terrific, great cartooning throughout. Bill Griffith really, he's a pro, man. Bill Griffith is like, he's not some, dope smoking hippie cartoonist who dicks around. He really works hard, as we know from doing a 5-day-a-week comic strip for 30 years now, I think. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can find it. I totally recommend it. Definitely worth having in your academy. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.